my name is Pember, and with me today is my grandmother, Irma Shapiro. She had went to Cairo during the uprising of Egypt. She just so happens to be a social studies teacher.
And all seemed calm. We had no idea this was going to happen. We heard from our guide that there would be a one-day demonstration in Cairo at Tahrir Square for people who wished to have President Mubarak leave. It was to be a one-day demonstration that lasted for the next 10 days. We caught a demonstration in Luxor. We went out to visit the souk, which is the markets, the bazaar, and we walked through it, and then we heard very loud voices and shouting, and we saw people running towards the end of the street. So we went to look, and there were people standing in trucks, yelling, screaming. Of course, we don't speak Arabic, so I can't tell you exactly what they were saying, but they were waving their arms, and some had pictures of President Mubarak, and across the picture they had X'd out over his face. So I got the feeling they wanted him out. And after a while, after they screamed and the audience was shouting with them in unison, we heard sirens, and we knew the police were coming and that there was bound to be a clash. So we decided it was safer to move away, which we did. However, we then saw the next day the army stationed all over Luxor, as it was in all the major cities. They had tanks, they had trucks, and of course plenty of soldiers. They surrounded the banks, they surrounded the ATM machine because of looting. The government buildings had been attacked by stones. They broke the windows of the buildings, and those buildings were then closed, and the windows were boarded up, or what was left of windows. Most of the merchants closed their stores. They had large metal plates that they put over them because they were afraid of looting. We were on the ship, and on the ship there were stores, and the merchants left the ship with all of their goods because they were afraid looters would come on the ship and steal. We were supposed to leave Luxor and fly to Hurghada, which is a resort on the Red Sea. There were no flights leaving the airport, and it was deemed too dangerous to travel by bus, which would have been 3 hours away. So we never got to go there. We just had to stay on the ship until arrangements could be made to get us out.
Okay, what did the Egyptian government do about the demonstrations? For instance, what role did the army play?
Well, the first part was when the demonstrations took place, the police were there, and the police tried to break up the demonstrations, even though the demonstrators maintained they were going to be peaceful. But there were bullets that were fired. There was tear gas used. Then when the crowd got unruly and attacked the police withdrew, and the army came in. And the army was stationed, but the army said they would not break up the demonstration. They would do nothing, and basically they did nothing. Even when people took the opportunity to loot stores, and they broke into and looted the Egyptian Museum, which has most of their precious artifacts. Then private citizens, including the actor Omar Sharif, formed a line around the museum to protect it and to stop people from going in and looting. But the army did not take part. They refused to, which surprised many people since Mubarak and the army are on very good terms.
What was the government's response?
I think the government was, first of all, very surprised and kind of caught off balance. They did not expect more than the one-day demonstration. Everyone was under the opinion that after they protested one day, that then things would go back to normal, which it didn't. The protesters managed to stay, and the government at first kind of ignored them, cut off the banks so that they didn't have money, and of course the stores were closed, so the people were running low on food supplies. Merchants were even afraid to open their stores because they didn't know how much damage would be done. And then when the government realized that this was going to continue, and they began to get pressure from the United States and from European nations about making concessions, Mubarak sent his family out of the country, and people thought he was about to resign. But he went back on television and he said he would not run again. His term expires in September and he would stay. He did fire many of his ministers and bring in some new people, hoping that this would satisfy the people, but the people want him out. And they said they would not negotiate until they got him out. Now, his second in command has made overtures to the opposition, who before were banned, including the Muslim Brotherhood. And they said they will sit down and talk with them, but they still say they do not want to talk until Mubarak steps down. Now they're trying to, get them to sit at the table and see what will turn things around. Because what the West fears is that there will be a vacuum, there will be a void, there will be no one running the government. And they're afraid of a situation such as in Iran, where you're going to have the extremists come in and take over. And the United States does not want to lose an ally.
The news had reported looting, but did you see this happening?
Well, I saw buildings that had rocks thrown through the windows that were broken. I saw stores that had metal plates across them that did not open and had been opened the day before but stayed closed for the rest of the time. I knew we couldn't get to the banks, they were shut down. We saw ATM machines that were broken into.
Did you feel safe as an American tourist? Was there like any anti-American sentiment, or did you feel you were in danger?
I didn't get a sense that they were angry with me as an American tourist. In fact, there were many posters that said, Americans stay, because of course they depend upon tourist business for their livelihood. And of course the tourists were going to get out. We didn't feel personally threatened. Nobody came up to us in the streets. However, when people are rioting and you're walking, the rock doesn't know I'm a tourist, don't hit me. Or if the army or if the police are shooting, those bullets don't know I'm an American, don't kill me. But of course you begin to worry when you're told that you can't travel because it's not safe.
What if anything, did American State Department do to help you get out of Egypt?
As far as I could see personally, nothing. There was no American consulate or embassy in Luxor. I did inquire. I was told the only one is in Cairo, and the calls were not going out, so I couldn't call them. I did hear that the American government was getting people out. Well, I personally didn't see it, although the guide said that additional planes were sent. All I know is it took 3 days of going to the airport in Luxor to be told no planes are flying. And we had to have a plane come from Cairo to Luxor to bring us into Cairo, where we could then get an international flight to New York. So that took us 3 days.
What was the worst part about being in Egypt with the civil unrest?
The fact that we couldn't get word out to our families to tell them that we were safe or what was going to happen or what when we anticipated getting home, and the fact that the news, our getting the news or what was happening, was very erratic. Sometimes we got television, sometimes we didn't. The tour guides said, oh yes, you're getting out today, and of course we didn't get out that day. It was the lack of real information.
You saw, what do you think will happen next?
I think that Mubarak is going to leave. He will be unhappy, but I think he's going to be forced to, because I think the Western powers are going to force him to. We saw Tunisia's government fall and a new one established. I think Egypt is going to go, and I think there's going to be a lot of unrest in the Middle East. Jordan's government is getting very nervous, and they have made some concession to their people. There are demonstrations in Yemen. I think there's going to be a big vacuum, and what is the scariest part is you don't want the extremists to come in.
Demonstrated against their monarchies or dictatorships now that Egypt has done this?
Yes, it started in Tunisia, it then went to Egypt, it's happening in Yemen. Jordan, I told you, is afraid. It's definitely going to go. People have seen that it's worked once, being Tunisia, so they feel they don't have too much to lose. When you have nothing, what more can they do to you?
What were the concerns of the people?
The people were asking to get rid of a dictatorship and to have a democracy. They were also asking for a better life, better living conditions. They wanted higher salaries. They wanted some of the wealth that they saw the upper class have that they didn't have. A large number of people live on $2 a day. That's not a very good life. And they were hoping if they got rid of the current regime that a democracy would come in, that they would have political rights, social rights, and economic rights.
Okay. When you were in Egypt, did you get to do everything you wanted, or did these demonstrations force you to make some change of plan?
We were lucky. We saw all but the resort area of Hurghada, which is on the Red Sea. We did not get to do that, but that was only 3 days, and so we were lucky. It would have been lovely. We kind of were prisoners on the ship. We couldn't go anywhere, and it was very eerie because all the other ships were empty.
I understand that you were
that
vacationing
was
in
really
Egypt
not
during
too much to give up.
the demonstrations of Cairo. But were you present in Cairo? Thank you for taking your time for this interview.
You're quite welcome.